What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Balls in Your Face podcast. I'm Christian Rivera.
It's your boy Josh Ramos.
I'm Maziel Hernandez. Guys, it's been a long time.
It's been a little while. It's been
a hot minute.
It feels like a little while, but we still drop content every single Monday and Friday, so it hasn't been anything realistically.
Just like WWE, Mondays and Fridays.
As you guys can see, we got some new upgrades to the set. What do you guys think about our flag?
We got a flag, man, and be on the lookout for this because this is gonna be posted everywhere. I'm gonna have this on my truck, and I'm gonna be driving around the country with that on my truck.
You got pulled over. The cop's like, balls in your face. He's like, nah, he's getting a ticket.
Yes, sir. Look it up on YouTube and Instagram.
Sir, come with me. You're getting arrested.
That's exactly what it has to be. I have a question for y'all before we get into it. I have a question.
Hey, I love these questions.
John Cena or Randy Orton?
John Cena.
Randy Orton. I hated John Cena growing up.
Why?
I just didn't like him. So growing up, that was my cousin's
You're
favorite
such a
wrestler.
liar.
No, my cousin's favorite.
Rooted for him and
My
everything.
cousin's favorite wrestler was John Cena, right? My brother's favorite wrestler was Batista. So I was like, damn, like who can I go for? That's like different. So I was like, Randy Orton.
Triple H. I mean,
Well, yeah, but I was like, something told me to go for Randy Orton. So he was always my favorite growing up, no matter what. At first, it was Bobby Lashley. And then he left.
Really? Bobby Lashley?
Yeah, it was Bobby Lashley. He left because he went to, I think, TNA or whatever it was. And then I was like, I always liked Randy Orton too. So I was like, it's going to be Randy Orton.
Everyone loved John Cena growing up. Everybody did. Literally
He was
everybody.
just a liar. He wants to be different.
I mean, the RKO. So, like, and another reason I didn't like him, my cousin, when I was younger, he said I was gullible. He told me John Cena was his cousin.
Yeah.
And I believed it. And
Randy Orton's cousin or his cousin?
No, that John Cena was his cousin.
Whose cousin?
His cousin's cousin.
Why are you confused? Yeah, he told me that, and I was like, yo, like, why can't I get an autograph or anything? He's like, no, like, he can't. And my whole, like, I was younger, I was like, bro, you're telling me this guy can't give me an autograph, and that's my cousin's cousin? Like, that's bogus.
Oh my
So, like, in my mind, like, I grew, like, a dislike for him.
You're still like that today.
Does John Cena and your cousin look alike?
Not even
I don't think
close.
so.
Not even close. So,
Yo.
maybe I was too gullible.
I met Sheamus.
Oh, the jar of mayo?
Yo, he's that white in real life.
John Cena called him that. That's the only reason why.
I don't remember that.
I remember watching John Cena's raps when he tried to rap and stuff.
I mean, he was pretty good. He did his own theme song and everything like that. Yeah. But
a lot of people do that, though.
I don't even know what he looks like. You can't even see him.
He made jorts very hip. Think about it. Everyone wrestles in tights, and he wrestled in jorts.
Jorts and sneakers.
No, I find it funny when they asked Conor McGregor. I forgot what they asked him, but he was like, "I'm not a 40-year-old past my prime wearing jean shorts to fight." Like he
Oh
was,
my god!
He was throwing shots at John Cena. I'm like, bro.
And now John Cena's in movies, so
That's what all the
John
wrestlers
Cena's
do.
probably the most famous wrestler.
I remember
The Rock. I mean,
I seen Randy Orton. Randy Orton has a movie too, right? He has
but
like
it's
one.
not good.
Yeah.
The Miz has 2 movies and they're not good.
they all transition to acting, I guess.
I mean, because they are acting.
You can't make much money in wrestling.
Wrestling's real though. Wrestling's real. It's not fake. No, we're kidding. But yeah, we can go right into the topic now. You got it?
What is the topic? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Still?
We'll cut it out.
We'll just restart the
Yeah,
whole
we'll
thing.
just we'll just cut that part
Cut
out.
that part.
All right. So you say what's the topic?
So we'll go right into the topic.
All right. So the topic is: did fantasy football ruin the NFL?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I ain't gonna lie.
That's a very open-ended question. And I'll say this. As a sports fan, I didn't start watching football until I would say probably like the mid-2010s. I would say the thing that got me into football was fantasy football. So my cousins, like, they're like, oh, like, we do fantasy football. I'm like, what is that? Like, I'm a basketball fan. I'm like, I know there's fantasy basketball. So, like, it's similar concept. I'm like, I don't know too much about football. So they're like, just do the league or whatever. So we do it. Go through the draft. I don't even know all the players like that. I think I did Yahoo my first time. And it's like, it gives you suggested players that you can draft and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. So, like, I do it. my team was pretty decent or whatever. So like as I'm going through, I started learning. I'm like, okay, so this receiver is actually pretty good. All right, this receiver doesn't have a quarterback that's that good. This running back is in a run heavy offense. So like I started learning more about football, and I would say that's what got me to the game. So like as far as exposure, I feel like there's a lot of people that probably don't know too much about the sport that get into it because of fantasy. So I can honestly say I was one of those people like when I first started. So from that aspect, I don't think it's a bad thing. But I feel like it has its downside. Like as a fantasy owner, like I'm a Patriots fan. Like I can't have no division rivals on my team. Like I'm not gonna have Josh Allen on my fantasy team.
But didn't you have Josh Allen on your fantasy
so
team?
the thing is, I forgot what happened. I think that pick got auto drafted for me because I would never draft the Buffalo Bills player on my team. So that pick got auto drafted for me, and that was his breakout year. And I literally traded him for a bag of chips. Like I was like, yo, like I just can't have him on my team. Like I just can't because I'm not putting myself in a position where I'm like, yo,
What bag of chips was it?
Doritos. No.
Okay, so it's
I'm not gonna put myself in a position where I'm like, yo, I need a big week from Josh Allen this week, but damn, he goes against New England. So it's like, do I root against him? Do I root for him? So I guess from that perspective, that's why I'm like, but what do you think?
I mean, like for me, thinking about the whole topic itself, it's pretty much just because like at one point in time there was a lot more team likeness into the game. Whereas now with fantasy football, you have a lot more like where you like the individuals, where you're kind of rooting for this individual and this individual, but you're not really rooting for one team. And I can kind of relate to that because once again, I continue to harp on this. The Giants have not been good in a little while, but I would root for these individual players that are on different teams. And sometimes even on a Giants team, like there's one player that does good for me. And I'm like, hey, this guy's A1 because he does good. And it's a nobody. But like for me, like thinking about the topic itself, like pretty much it's just that a lot of the people that are into the game now are rooting for players as an individual. So it's kind of just like, what does that do to that individual now? As in like, I feel like definitely in the past 10 years compared to the previous 10 years, players have more of a stance on things, and they have more of a, what's the word for it? Like stature in the league, to the point where it's kind of like, I don't want to say they're running the league, because honestly, compared to not all sports, but compared to other sports, like basketball players in the NBA, they run that league.
It's turning NBA-esque.
Yes, it's turning NBA-esque with the amount of players that are demanding trades, that are doing this, that are doing that, because they know their value. And hey, I mean, granted, if you're good and you know what you're worth, then obviously go for it, right? But the point is that there was players like this 10 years ago, and they didn't do these type of actions or anything like that. Or prime example, like us fantasy owners, like we'll hype up this one player. Prime example, Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel right now, he's on contract. It's not like he was going into the season without a contract. He wants another one though because he feels like he's deserving of it. Different situation when it comes to in terms of money and stuff like that. But the point is that what did he also do? Bro, he was like a top 2 wide receiver in fantasy.
That man saved my season, even though I still lost. But
like literally, like, and I feel like obviously not NFL owners look at fantasy results and like, oh yeah, we need that guy. But it goes hand in hand. Like a fantasy player does well, he gets hyped up very much because all of us fantasy owners that have him on our teams are like, he's goated, he's the best wide receiver in the league, stuff like that, and that could hype them up.
It impacts jersey sales. Like I couldn't even get a Deebo jersey, and I'm like, yo, last year like Deebo was, I mean, like NFL wise, like he was hurt. I mean, he struggled in the offense a little bit. Like he was a high draft pick, but then last year he took it to another level where he's I think he was a wide running back. Like that was his quote unquote position because he was running a lot of times. And like as far as like I agree with what you're saying. Like as far as like each player's stature, it's growing because of that. But I also think it's hurting the game because when you're doing fantasy, you don't pick defensive players. So it's like you got a player like Aaron Donald that's like a lot of people say he's one of the best players in the league, or he's one of the best defensive players in the league, if not like the best player. But it's like as a fantasy owner, like I'm more focused on, let's say, a DK Metcalf or someone like that who isn't necessarily like the best receiver, best offensive player, but I'm like, he's getting me points compared to Aaron Donald, who's like, and TJ Watt and all these great defensive players that you're like, all right, I'm drafting the team defense, but I'm not focusing so much on one player. So I feel like from that aspect, like it kind of seems like it's not fair because it's like I'm focusing so much on them and not focusing on the other side of the ball. So that's a problem that like I see with it.
I feel like at the same time too, though, like that's kind of just how it's always been in terms of like offense is the one that like gets praised and stuff like that, and defense never really. Like if you ask any real football fans like who's the best players to ever play the game, everyone says Lawrence Taylor. But when you talk about it, like who really thinks about Lawrence Taylor? As in like if you ask anybody else, it's straight offensive players. You think about Tom Brady, you think about Joe Montana, you think about Dan Marino, like you think about offense.
Tom Brady.
So offense is like kind of just like it's always been the fireworks show and stuff like that. So I feel like fantasy does play a role though, because like you said, like no defensive player gets like claimed and praised in fantasy at all. So and they're trying to get a bag too.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the fantasy overall?
Well, definitely going off of like the individual player. I mean, look at when I had Young Ho Koo. I mean, he snapped. He gave a whole bunch of points, and he became real popular, especially like just his likeness, especially on Instagram. I mean, he became huge. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot. You know, that's how I got into watching football too. In middle school I did a fantasy with my friends, and I didn't know who anybody was, and I was just going off of random people, and then I was actually watching games and stuff like that afterwards. Yeah. So that was how I got into it. But yeah, I mean, everyone's really focused on the individual players more than anything. I mean, you're looking at a defense as a whole. You're not looking at one particular player on the defense. You're looking for the best defense overall. And let's say Aaron Donald's on a trash defense, you're not going to take that defense. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're not worried about him. You're worried about the entire team. So
yeah.
That's definitely, I agree with what you guys said about that.
See, and I feel like there's like advantages and disadvantages to it though, because I feel like the great thing about fantasy football is that it's bringing other people to watch the sport. Like the fact that fantasy football was there, and that's what kind of just bridged you guys into it. Obviously, at the end of the day, like I'm assuming like down the line, like you're actually just into football and not just fantasy. But the point is that like I like that it's a gate for the non-average, like, or the person that doesn't watch football. They do fantasy football and they're starting to get into it. Like I know about like your brother and like different family members themselves. Personally, like for me, like I've always loved football and I didn't do fantasy football. Like I never did it. I remember vividly when the Giants won their 2012 championship. In the beginning, they always do like a playoff, because okay, like that fantasy, the way fantasy works is obviously at the end of the season is the last season in fantasy, but then the playoffs start. So they had a playoff challenge, and I remember joining it, and literally I added like, I wasn't a fantasy guy, so all I did was pick all players for my teams. I had Hakeem Nicks on my team. I had Eli Manning. I had Bradshaw running the football, and then I don't think I could pick their defense. So, but pretty much it was like a playoff challenge for fantasy. That's the first time I ever did it, and I thought it was cool. But guess what? That was in 2012, and I didn't pick it back up until our first league. Our first league was the first time I did it, which was like 3 years ago. So it's definitely like, even for like I don't know, maybe I just never got around to it, because I mean fantasy was huge. When did fantasy start getting popular again? I
believe it was like the early 2010s, and like that's when the big players, like you see ESPN, they had their own like fantasy like platform, and now they created their own app for it. Yahoo Sports, CBS, like all the big players, like once
NFL got their own.
Once they
that
started
was later though.
Once they started getting into it, like where it was becoming really popular, where you see like millions and millions of dollars like invested into it, where it's like, all right, let's monetize on it themselves. So when the big players got in, that's where it got.
And now you look at like DraftKings and stuff like that do like a daily kind of thing.
Yeah, they do like different variations of it.
So
even in the past 10 years, they have their own segment on a show where they literally just inform you on what fantasy players to get, what fantasy players to sleep
and
on,
literally on
stuff
ESPN. Like that's like a whole. That's a whole thing in itself too. I mean,
yeah, so it's ginormous, and I think what it comes down to, what it boils down to, is because obviously when you compare, this is a whole separate topic in itself, but like NFL to college, right? College, there is no fantasy college. There's no fantasy football for college. So you're strictly rooting for that team, and your whole pride is into that team. Versus now in the NFL, it's kind of like it's spread out. Like I'm not gonna lie, I am one of those. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest Giants fan. I am a Giants fan, but I'll be like, oh, I have a team in the AFC too. Like, I'll be like, yeah, I kind of like this team. Like that Ravens team from 2 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, I want them to go win a chip. Stuff like that. And I feel like when it comes in terms of college, with nothing like, and think about it, even in college, no player runs that league, or no player comes close to running that, because at the end of the day, it's just like a blood, sweat, and tears type of thing. in college versus NFL itself.
Yo, Baker Mayfield in college went crazy.
But he didn't run.
I don't care.
League,
He's still not running the league.
I don't care what you say he is in the NFL now. When he was at Oklahoma, that man was.
But think about it. He was doing all that, and then he got smacked in the playoffs.
No,
so
you're
it's
right,
like
because you yeah.
So it's like it's crazy. And then I still haven't even been to a college game, but I really want to because I hear the atmosphere isn't crazy, and some of them.
We should go to like the Orange Bowl, right? That's what they call it.
Something like that.
Citrus Bowl.
I think it's
Citrus Bowl.
Citrus Bowl.
But like the atmosphere in that is crazy. And imagine going to like a visiting school. Like one of my friends, he went to a UCF game, and bro, think about it. Like probably 80% of that stadium is just filled with UCF fans. And when you see it on TV, bro, it's like just straight people posted everywhere. Like you just don't see that when it comes to the NFL. So I think like
and college football stadiums are bigger than NFL stadiums.
Yeah. So obviously I'm not gonna say that strictly because of fantasy, but I think that's just an example to the point where it's just a love for the game when it comes to college versus now in the NFL. There's so many split things, and I mean the way it's trending. Do you think other leagues are gonna end up picking up and being like player driven? Like in baseball, do you think that can happen in baseball? Like what's happening now, or
to an extent, yes. But like I said, we already see it in the NBA where you have someone like James Harden who in the past 2 years or 3 years forced his way out of 2 situations. So like in the NBA, yes, I would say the NFL is becoming more like that. And like you said, I think fantasy does contribute to that. And I think that kind of hurts it because like you said, a lot of people, what they liked about football was what's the word? Not the disparity, but I'm forgetting the word.
Oh, the parody?
Yes, there we go. I was close.
He said disparity. That's
Close
two
enough.
different words.
They liked the parody of it. What's like now you got some players that are like trying to force their way out of situations. So that turns off some people. Like they want their team having an equal chance. Like that every year coming in, like it's a different year. Like they can win. So like if you got some players that are trying to, I guess, cherry pick their situations. That's what some people don't like about the NBA. Yeah. So as far as MLB and that everything too, I think everyone might transition towards that. Once you get a big enough name where they can pick where they're going to go, it's going to trend towards that.
But in the MLB, you have to be like one of the biggest names. Cause like Xander Bogaerts isn't going to be able to do that, even though he's a good player. You ask a normal person who Xander Bogaerts is, they're going to be like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
But hopefully if you say Shohei, they'll know.
Yeah.
But like,
hopefully.
You know what I mean? Like, bro, like the best player on the team is, or like Aaron Judge, you know? You ask about I don't even think they would know like Giancarlo Stanton like that. Mm-hmm. Like you would hear Aaron Judge. So if Giancarlo Stanton tried doing that, I don't think he would get through.
And the main reason why I asked that though is because the thing is like it's not like football is the only thing that has a fantasy to it. Like it's not just fantasy football. There's fantasy for baseball. There's fantasy for basketball. It's just football is the main known one. I think it's also because, bro, like you only have to prepare for it once a week instead of like
that's exactly what
in
it
baseball
is.
you have to change.
Season.
Yeah, in baseball you have to check that every day. And
yeah,
stuff like
so
that.
it's too much. Fantasy football, you set your lineup on a Wednesday and you're set for until Sunday starts, or if you have Thursday games or whatever. So that's why also just the sport of like what the nature is. Football's football. It's once a week. That's what makes it so popular too. But you know what's the worst feeling?
What?
When you have one player left and they have another player left and they're dependent on each other. So I remember I had Kyler Murray left. He was my quarterback, and his receiver was Hopkins. That's when the Hail Murray happened. So Kyler threw the touchdown. I'm like, let's go! Like, because every touchdown, if y'all don't know the standard rules, for every 25 throwing yards, it's a point. For every touchdown thrown, it's 4 points. But for every touchdown received, it's 6 points. And for every receiving yard, it's 10 points. So you get more points in that situation, right? So I had Kyler. I'm like, let's go. Like, I got the touchdown. That's extra 4 points. Like, I gave myself a cushion against this guy. And then I see Hopkins caught it. And I see Hopkins standing up with the ball. And I'm like, so he got more points on the touchdown and yards for that. And I think he ended up beating me by like a really small margin where like at first like I was celebrating. I'm like, let's freaking go. And I'm like, oh, it just had to be Hopkins.
It was like 0.24.
Like it just had to be Hopkins. So that's the worst feeling though.
And that's the parody of fantasy in itself too. That's the craziest thing too. I can't say that I never had a Cowboys player on my team. Sadly, I can't never say I.
You see, you're not a real fan. Then I can't have no one in my division is on my team.
But I guess this is why I just do good in fantasy.
No, that's not it.
Fantasy and NFL is separate.
No,
but no. It definitely, I definitely think it has a role into like. Would I say it ruined the NFL? Because okay, let's ask that question right now. Did it ruin the NFL? I'm gonna say no.
I feel like it's trending towards it. No. If it continues the way that it's at, what if you got so many players that start requesting trades and everything like that?
Yeah, but that's not solely off of fantasy.
It's not solely off of it, but
you're not going to be able to stop that. I mean, there's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, bro. They have their own likeness.
But that's definitely a big boost that boosts them up.
I feel like no. Does it ruin the NFL? No. Does it ruin NFL fandom? I think low key yes. As in to the point where we grew up with fantasy football already being here. There's people here that didn't grow up with fantasy there. So maybe the way that people were fans of different teams was like people were just diehard this team and everyone else sucks. Maybe. I'm honestly not like that. I think there are other good teams, and sometimes I'm a fan of other players on different teams that makes me kind of root for those teams. So I think that's kind of just how we grew up. We grew up with fantasy football, including more player likeness versus back then. Not everybody was known like that. Not everybody was out like that. And then also when it comes to like how you're saying where it's trending, nowadays people are making money that the league has never seen before. And it's just going to keep trending in that direction. Like, people are just making more money. No one's going to make less. So I feel like, obviously, the more money you get, the bigger head you get. Players feel big. Stuff like that. Pause.
No, but Azil, so take away social media. Let's say we have no social media, just fantasy. You think this would still be happening?
Yes.
But
because you get players that get elevated to a higher level. Like I said, not saying Debo.
See, that was a bad situation because I said just fantasy. That's really bad. Because if there's no social media, just fantasy, then that
Because like I keep saying,
bro, I mean,
I keep saying Debo because I drafted him in the 10th round. He was a good receiver. He took that level to great where you see where he is now, and like
Did you say 10th round?
I took him in the 10th in my league.
Bro, I took him in like the 4th, bro.
Yeah, you reached.
That's not a reach because look what he did.
Okay, but at the time, no one thought that. He was coming off a year where he was injured, and no one thought he was going to be
maybe not the 4th. It was probably like the 6th.
I took McCaffrey in the first round. That was a bad decision.
He's always hurt. And then, lo and behold, this offseason, he's requesting a trade. Like how Josh said, he's under contract, but he wants a new one. So it's like, where you see a player like that got elevated because of that. And then it goes back to what I said. You look at a defensive player that doesn't get that same attention.
Do you think that's in like their mind? Like, oh yeah, I'm a really good fantasy player.
I can't say that.
I feel
like it goes hand in hand though. Because if you're a good fantasy player, you're a good player.
So then that's what I'm saying. So you're just a good player in general.
What do you think when the fans are in the stadium? You saved my season. You won me my championship. What do you think that player? They're gonna get a big head.
I guess so. Because I feel like prime example, like I think Jalen Hurts stinks, but I think he's a good fantasy player. Why? Because he can run and throw. Any dual threat quarterback is a good fantasy quarterback, but I think he sucks though. So I don't know. So maybe it doesn't entirely change everything.
That's a good one for Jalen Hurts because if you ask a lot of people out there, you'll get mixed reviews, and maybe some people are skewed because of fantasy. They're like, I think fantasy wise, I think last year he was the number 2 quarterback. I think Josh Allen was number 1.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. He's trash.
But then you got some people like Josh that are like, this man shouldn't even be on the team. Like,
he's trash, bro. He's literally trash.
So do you think fantasy is the reason for Antonio Brown going crazy? The next topic.
I think so.
Nothing can stop him from going crazy. That's on him.
Nah, but real quick though, you need to fix our league so we can pick kickers because we weren't able to last year.
This past
year,
that
really pissed me off.
This past year, I took did I add a receiver?
Bro, we need a new
I took off a kicker.
Man.
I took off kicker and added a receiver.
You added a receiver. Did you take out defense too?
No, defense was there.
Defense was there.
Yeah, I think you just took off kicker and added extra receiver.
Yeah, and I was pissed. I was going for Young Hoku in the first round, and I couldn't find him
because he didn't have that good of a year last year.
Yeah, I know.
So.
I got him when he was good.
I like having
Ku in the game,
less receiver slots because it makes you manage better.
I swear, this is the same guy that last year he was telling me to add it because in his other league he had more.
Yeah, but I still had a kicker.
What were we doing?
So you just said you wanted less.
We just have a bad commissioner. That's all you are.
Didn't we do Yahoo?
We did Yahoo last year. We did ESPN this year.
I didn't like ESPN.
We did Yahoo. 2 leagues, did we not?
We did.
No, we did 1 league.
We did Yahoo, and then we did no.
What did we do? I don't even
know what app we used.
We just need a new commissioner.
Who won? Mike won.
Yes.
Oh my God. Mike. Was he even watch these videos?
Damn, Mike.
Was I in the championship?
I'll tell you what, Mike doesn't even watch those fantasy shows, bro. So I don't even know how he won.
Did he get auto drafted?
His team was garbage, so I really don't know.
I felt bad at him at one point. The fact that I lost to him says a lot.
Bro, just to say it real quick, Mike had the projected worst team in the beginning of the season after the draft, and he ended up winning. So I guess that just shows maybe fantasy is a great thing.
We're just not good managers. Maybe that's what it is.
If you want to join a balls in your face fantasy, let us know.
Yo,
That's actually a great idea.
That's a great idea.
I was thinking about it the entire show, and I was just waiting for this moment right
it's
here.
Happening. A balls in your face league is happening. Yo, that was great.
Obviously, us three will
idea.
be in it. So that means there'll be 7 slots. So as time comes closer,
What do you mean? We can open it up to more.
Yeah, we could.
you want to run a 12-man league, a 14-man league?
Well, let's do a 40-man
Let's do
league.
Let's
Everybody
do it.
that watches these videos, man.
If you guys feel like you could take us on in fantasy, let us know. We're gonna see.
And then the winner of the league gets to join us on an episode.
Ooh. Now you're asking for too much. No.
Done deal. Book closed. We're ready. With that being said, though, make sure you follow us on all socials. The Balls in Your Face Podcast on Instagram, Balls in Your Face Podcast on TikTok, and BIYF the podcast on Twitter.
Back like he never left. With all that being said, you have just watched another episode of the Balls in Your Face Podcast. I'm Christian Rivera.
It's your boy Josh Ramos.
I'm Azil Hernandez.
Bye.